Okay, so the class is being recorded. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dr. Sameh, and this is A100A, and we're doing chapter. Is it chapter 3 or 2? It's chapter 3, I think, in the book 2, Tradition and Descent. Right? Spoke enough about tradition and what it means, and we also spoke about dissenting and why people sometimes dissent. Dissenting is deviating from the norm. So there are established norms, and people are challenging those norms, whether they have good enough reasons or not. This is up for grabs. Um, so it's poetry that we're doing this time around and last time, and it's also tradition and dissent. And of course, we're not talking about moral beliefs or moral traditional beliefs. We're not talking about artistic or painting. We're talking about poetic traditions, poetic practices, and we are seeing how some poets how they would deviate from the established poetic norms. And one of them happens to be D.H. Lawrence, who is going to figure very prominently today with 5 poems. We also had, William Blake conforming to the traditions and also deviating from them. We'll see also John Donne and how he also, he is consistent with some of those sets of traditions, but he also deviates from that. Even the anthology itself, the choice of the poems in the anthology by Meldon, there is deviation from the established anthology compiling norms, as we're going to see in a minute. So without further delay, let's go all the way to the chapter and see how we will handle that. So I need to share. Yeah. So can you see that? Yeah. Okay. Can you see the chapter? I'm sharing the chapter with you.
Yes, yes,
Yes,
doctor.
clear.
Yes, doctor.
Okay. Okay. So, good. Let me just, I think I have an announcement to make about those who missed the TMA. People approached me perhaps yesterday and last week about the TMA. Those who didn't do the TMA has a chance on Sunday at 10 a.m. Okay, so it's 10 a.m. Until 11:30 a.m. too on Sunday next week. So if we have people who missed the quiz, the TMA, they have a chance on Sunday, inshallah, at 10 a.m. If you happen to know somebody who missed the TMA, but he or she is not around, kindly share the information with them. This is only and exclusively for those who didn't do the TML. And sometimes people come to you and say, listen, can I kind of have a makeup because I didn't do as well as I wanted in the first attempt. This is not what we mean by a TMA makeup. A TMA makeup means that you missed the first attempt and we're giving you a chance. Anyway, so let's go back to reading poetry. So it's reading poetry, the favorite book of beasts. Spoke enough about what poetry means as a genre and how different it is from the other genres, right? Remember when you spoke about the fact that it is in terms of form and shape, it is unique. In terms graphically, it's also unique. When you look at it from a distance or afar, it's normally in the middle. You don't have this margin to margin lines. And also we said that poetry is about music, internal music. Spoke about rhymes and rhyming. We spoke about rhythm and meter. We spoke about imagery and um, all of these things that would, distinguish poetry from non-poetry. So, what kind of poetry are we doing? We're not, doing human poetry, actually, if we can categorize poetry into human or animal poetry. We're doing animal poetry. And animal poetry is obviously not a new thing. It has a long tradition. And that's what we're seeing. We're going to check whether the poets that we are featuring in the chapter are following the tradition of animal poetry, or perhaps they have something new to add and contribute. So it's reading poetry, it's reading animal poetry. And the poems that we are selecting are taken from an anthology of poetry. And the anthology has the title The Fabled Book of Beasts. So you cannot, if you're taking from an anthology, you would also touch on the idea of anthology making and how the people, the editors or the anthologists, choose their poems, why they would choose this poet and not that one. And we said that it is very controversial and very tricky, and sometimes even very frustrating for some of us. We all have our own poetic tastes, and we all have our favorite poems and our favorite poets. So if we don't see our poetry represented in the anthology, if we don't see our favorite poet or poem, we normally accuse the anthologist or the editor of being perhaps biased against us, against our choices. And like I told you, if it's an anthology of world literature or world poetry, and the anthologist wouldn't include Arabs, you would say that he has or doesn't have Arabs or Muslim. We would say that he has this Islamophobia kind of thing. If you have an Arab and the Arab anthologist is not including people from other races, you would accuse the Arab of being perhaps chauvinistic or biased against the other races, and so on and so forth. As you can see, two people would agree on specific choices. Everyone has his own way of looking at things. Again, when we come to this part about the anthology, we will have the anthologist Meldon talk about it and giving us his reasons for, adopting a certain style in arranging the poems, and why this and why not that and everything. And we'll see whether he is also deviating from the tradition of anthology making or not. Okay, so let me just stress the fact that the descent that we were talking about here is descent in poetry. It's not descent in art, it's not descent in philosophy, it's not descent in moral values and traditions. Okay, so it's animal poetry, and we have a long history and a long tradition, and we spoke even about our own cultures. In Muslim and Arabic culture, we have animal poetry, which we said that we have animal literature in order to be perhaps more specific, because the poetry, We have literature that is written in prose. For example, when we spoke about Kalila and Demna, which is prose, and it's also anthropomorphic in the sense that we have animals speaking and delivering or communicating moral lessons and everything. We spoke yesterday. I said that we also have a very important philosophical tale, and it's called Hayy ibn Yaghzan, and it's also anthropomorphic, where Hayy, the main character, is obviously acting and reacting with animals around them. They are also given human attributes. They raise him up, and I said, and I was mistaken, and I stand corrected, and I said that Hayy Yaghzan, Ibn Yaghzan was written by Al-Farabi, the high and mighty philosopher. No, it was written by Ibn Tufail. Ibn Tufail is another philosopher, but he belongs to the western part of what once was the Arab and Muslim empire in Spain, in Andalusia. He was from there, while Al-Farabi is from the Middle East. Some people say that he is Turkish or Persian. Anyway, so I stand corrected. So Hayy ibn Yaghzan was written by Ibn Tufail and not by Al-Farabi. So this is also an example of anthropomorphic literature and philosophy. What else did we talk about? We have I think منطق الطائر. This is also anthropomorphic, but I think it was written in Persian, and it's by somebody by the name of Farid al-Din al-Attar. It also have those anthropomorphic atmospheres. If you still remember, and Dr. Ahmed referred to that yesterday when we spoke about the Quran and the fact that we have a great deal of anthropomorphism, where you also have the encounter between Sayyidina Sulaiman and the Hudhud, and there is a great deal of anthropomorphism in Quran. Anyway, so it's we started off with William Blake, and we said that you can almost tell that the arrangement is not chronological. It's not historical. If it was historical, we should have started with John Donne, but we're starting with William Blake. Okay. Okay. So if you still remember, when we also spoke about poetry, we said that perhaps unlike the other discourses, with poetry, even if you are at the center, if you have a different voice, if you are not totally in agreement with the poetic tradition of the time, you have to start off as a traditionalist, and then you make the transition to something different. So you have to start as a traditionalist in poetry. You have to train yourself in the traditional forms and styles that you have available, and then over time you have to change. You have to, and this is where dissent or dissenting comes. Should I stay traditionalist for the rest of my life? Should I start as a traditionalist and then I keep being a traditionalist? No, this is also not acceptable. Why? Because people are going to lose interest. So you start off as a traditional, that's fine, but over time you have to dissent. You have to have, and you have to find your own tone and your own voice. If you are so set in your old ways, in your old traditional ways, people are going to stop showing interest in your poetry. Okay, so this is exactly like what people do in music. If you have musical talent, if you sing, for example, so you normally start off, singing old songs that are part of the tradition. When people get to know you, you start to have your own songs. So imitation with poetry, imitation at the beginning is not a bad thing at all. But if you carry it to extremes, if imitation is your trademark, this is not obviously acceptable. You'll have to somehow change over time. The one who is doing just that is D.H. Lawrence. D.H. Lawrence happens to be a modern poet, and he started off imitating other poetic talents like William Blake and Walt Whitman, but over time he will deviate from their norms and he's going to start his own poems that are not very similar to what they do. So again, two things: you need tradition, and you also need innovation with poetry. So when people, when we talk about poetic tradition, we talk about what? So what are the aspects of poetry that we normally set tradition against? We normally talk about styles of writing, and we also talk about ideas. Styles of writing, we talk about the poetic forms like the stanza, the epic, the lyric, and we also talk about rhyme schemes. Okay, whether we have triplets or couplets, whether two lines would rhyme together, or three, a whole stanza. Um, heroic couplets and stuff. And we also talk about ideas. Ideas can be repeated over time, and poets would come and recycle them. Again, this is up to a limit. Okay, at one point you would even have to, champion new ideas, perhaps approach old ideas in a fresh and different way. Again, we stress the fact that you can't be a traditionalist all the time. So if you keep to rigid formulas, that would be very harmful for your reputation as a poet. Remember, we spoke about Louis MacNee or Louise MacNees. This is an Irish poet, an established one, and he had this very famous quotation where he says, "A poem to be recognizable must be traditional, but to be worth recognizing, it must be something new." So, in order for people to recognize you as a poet and to recognize your poem, you have to be traditional. You have to use an old style, for example. You have to use an old poetic form, the stanza, for example, because people are familiar with the stanza or the lyric. So they know that you exist. Physically, you're there, but you would take it to the next level and add something new, so that it would be worth their while to go and read your poem. So by being traditional, by using old forms and traditional forms, you are telling people that you are there. But whether they would take the extra mile or walk the extra mile and go and read your poem or not would depend on whether you are new on your ideas or not, or whether you're presenting something new or not. Again, we spoke about poetry and the fact that it does not lend itself to easy interpretation. And we said that of all the other genres, poetry would stand up as the most intellectual. Most intellectual means that you need to pull yourself together and think deeply about what you're reading. That's why we normally say that you don't read a poem once and you think that you will have the whole thing. You need to read a poem more than once, and you also need to read it out loud so that you can be slowed down. Otherwise, you're going to be reading it like, I mean, the way you read a newspaper. This kind of casual reading, this casual kind of reading is not acceptable with poetry. Poetry is slow, and poetry would need you to move beyond the surface. Okay, you move from the surface to substance, and this would take training, that would take knowledge, prior knowledge, that would take having, I mean, a solid world view. This is why if you read a poem at 20 and you come again and read the same poem at 40, if you're 40, you're going to find that you have fresh interpretations of the poem. We're not saying that the two interpretations at 20 and at 40 are going to be diametrically different. We're saying that reading the same poem at 40 or at 50 would give you more, you will find yourself coming up with new ideas. Again, what is interesting about poems is that you bring your own, insights and background to the poem. So the more knowledgeable you are, I mean, in life and what happens in life, the more able you are to come up with as many interpretations as you possibly can. Okay, so we started off last time with William Blake and his poem The Fly, and I said we need to look at the arrangement of the poems. If you look at them, you will quickly notice that they are not arranged in a chronological or in a historical way, where you start with the what is old and then you move to whatever is new. No, this is not happening. Starting with William Blake. If it's chronology that we're having, we should have started with John Donne because he happens to be the earliest or the oldest, and then William Blake, and then Mersulav Hollow. This is not happening, and there is a philosophy and a rationale behind it, and Meldon is going to share this with us. Anyway, this is the poem. We spoke about the poem last time, and we had our own observations about the poem, the fact that it is simple, short, the fact that the lines are not, long. Um, Remember when those were our initial impressions about the poem graphically. When you look at the poem from a distance or from afar, you can come up with these ideas. The fact that it is short, and the diction means words, the choice of words. The diction is also very simple. There is nothing complicated about it. And we said this is all meant by the poets. This is design. It's not just haphazard or random. Um, what did we say? We said, is it anthropomorphic in any way? Like I said, anthropomorphic means that you have, animals and insects given human attributes. And this is actually happening, right? What else did we say about the poem? to remember this poem?
Yes, doctor.
Yeah. So what did we say about it? So refresh my memory about it.
We said that the lines were short, and we compared it to life. No, life is short as well.
Yes. Did you like it? I mean, did you reflect on the poem? Did you have the chance to go over this poem and the other poems that I told you to perhaps prepare?
Yeah, this was my favorite. It was one of the, and it's easy on the ear.
That's interesting.
Excuse me.
Yeah, Dr. Ah.
Good afternoon, my teacher.
Good afternoon. Hi, how are you?
I'm for myself. I'm used to read Arabic poem.
Yeah.
But it's the first time for me to read an English poem.
Yeah.
It is at the beginning it will be difficult because it is different from prose or paragraphs or
Yeah, of course. Yes.
we have to get used of reading it, and it's wonderful because there is a rhyme and music, like music.
Yeah, you have tempo and rhythm. Yes, yes.
Yes, exactly. We have to يعني, get used of read it, and day by day we will enjoy it, I think.
Yeah, I'm sure you will like it, Dr. Ahmed. If you appreciate poetry in Arabic, you can always make the transition to appreciating poetry in English.
And
Appreciation, as a matter of fact, is cross-cultural. Appreciation is universal. If you appreciate a genre in Arabic, you appreciate the same genre in other languages. Like if you write in Arabic, if you have the talent to write in Arabic and you learn English, you will have the same talent in English. So, Dr. Ahmed is saying, it's only a matter of time. You train your eyes, you train your senses, so that eventually you will be able to appreciate poetry in English. Um, any other thoughts on or about the same before we move? Okay. Remember, we're focused normally. Remember that we said that our point of departure is normally the form of the poem. We focus on the form. We start with the form, and then we make the transition to the content or the messages or the ideas that the writer is trying to get across to us. And this is exactly what we did. We said that the lines are short. We said um, the choice even of the insect, the choice of the animals is also very significant. The lines are short, and the animal is significant, and that would perhaps point to the the shortness of human life. That would can you mute your mic, please? That would point to this is, I'm trying to say that this is very symbolic. Yeah, please mute your mic, whoever is having her mic on. I cannot. Yeah, please mute your mic, whoever is using your mouth. I don't, yeah.
Doctor,
Yeah.
sometimes the mic opens by itself when you disconnect.
No, I have a lady by the name of Hanan Hassan,
Yeah.
and her mic is on. She is obviously not with us even. She left the mic on, and I don't know where she went. Anyway, um, Again, we said that the shortness of the poem, the simplicity of the poem, the shortness of the lines, the insignificance of the chosen creature would all point to the transience or the brevity of human life, would be pointing to the vanity of human wishes, no matter how hard you try, no matter how ambitious you are, it will all come down to a backhand blow by fate, for example, where you would have this blind hand of fate and you die. Exactly like the fly, the little fly. All it requires would be, you know, a hand or okay. Again, we said that towards the end of the poem, you have this reconciliation with the self, this idea, this coming to terms with the idea of death, that whether you're happy or sad, there is obviously nothing you can do. This is what we call resignation. The poet is resigning to fate. He knows that there is nothing he can do about it. He cannot change anything. So better be happy if you cannot change anything. You are only as insignificant as a fly in the grand scheme of things. Remember, we said that this is also part of traditional poetry that we call nursery rhymes. And the nursery rhymes are poems, very short and very sweet, and they are normally addressed or written to children. We spoke about the idea of personification, where you normally give human attributes to non-animate things, inanimate things. Like when I say blind hand, so obviously hand is given a human attribute. The human attribute here is blindness. No, that applies to other people can be also blind. Now, perhaps blind here means rash and arrogant, and it's not very flattering when you use the word blind here. If I would translate it into Arabic, I would say blind hand, I would say yad or aid ghashima. I wouldn't say amya. Amya wouldn't capture what capture the correct meaning. So it's like I said, it's not a very flattering adjective to use. And when we also say thoughtless hand is also very anthropomorphic, and it's also a personification where the hand would be likened to a human being who is obviously behaving in a thoughtless way. So obviously human beings are the only creatures who can think, whether their thinking is thoughtful or thoughtless. And we spoke also about some other devices, like the simile when you use, like and as. And this is also one of the devices that poetry uses. Again, we're talking about the arbitrariness or the randomness of human life, and how no matter how organized and how planned your life is, it can come to nothing. All it takes would be some blind hand by fate. You can never tell what the future holds for you. So anthropomorphism, everyone, where human attributes are ascribed or given to something inhuman. Of course, anthropomorphism is, by the way, is not exclusive to poetry. It's something that we use in life. When we talk about a table and we say that the table has 4 legs, or when we talk about a chair and we say it has one of its legs is broken, this is obviously, I mean, a table or a chair does not have legs. So this is anthropomorphism, where you are giving an inanimate object a human attribute. Can you think of examples from life where we normally give human attributes to objects, to things? When we talk about the weather and you say that the weather is bad, but instead of saying that it is bad today, we say that it is very threatening. So threatening is obviously who threatens? Human beings, right? So you're giving the human attribute of threatening to a non-animate, to a non-human. So again, it's all about personalizing the impersonal in order to make this impersonal, yeah, the thing that is impersonal, in order to make it vivid and tangible. The idea of anthropomorphism has always been there, and it dates back to Aesop. Aesop is a Greek, an ancient Greek writer, and he used to write fables. Fables are moral stories where animals are featured as thinking and speaking, behaving and acting like human beings, and you normally have a moral lesson at the end. Again, like I said, all cultures have this tradition of animal poetry, where animals are given human attributes, and you normally have a moral lesson. Again, we're stressing the fact that we can have as many interpretations uh, as many we are. I mean, if you have 50 people, they can come up with 50 interpretations, and all of them can be valid and everything, provided that you give justifications for your argument. If you believe that the poem should be interpreted in a certain way, you should, produce evidence, credible evidence as why you're saying what you're saying. Again, the poem, if we go back to the poem, it's all, especially the last part, gives you the sense that it is a spiritual inflection or even reflection, where the poet is reflecting on life and what life is all about. And then we move to John Donne. And John Donne wrote a poem that has the title The Flea. And the poem is on the left. Okay, sorry. So what is it that that we're going to do? Are we going to read the analysis from the book right away, or or what? What do we call the analysis and what do we call the poem itself, ya Jama'ah? Remember yesterday we made this distinction. What do we call the poem?
The poem is the primary source.
Excellent. While the analysis, the critical material from outside the poem would be the secondary source, right? So are we going to start with the secondary source, everyone? The critical material or the poem?
We should give ourselves a chance to analyze it first.
Absolutely. Otherwise, you know something, critical analysis and secondary sources are going to spoil the experience for you. You wouldn't enjoy the poem because you will be influenced by what other people are saying about the poem. So I wouldn't recommend at all. I wouldn't recommend that people start with the critical material. Okay, so let's go to the poem. And this is the poem. I'm trying to make it as big as I can. Okay, so I want you to read it. And I'll give you 5 minutes. Remember, this is what we normally do. We're going to mute our mics and we're going to read the poem um, out loud. So I would like you to read it twice and then come back to me with the impressions about the poem, whatever you have understood, that whatever you haven't. Look at the language and see. It's always good to make comparisons between poems. Set this poem against the previous one and see how different they are, whether they talk about the same thing or they are different. So it's we need a thinking mind, somebody who thinks, because like we said, poetry is about using your intellectual powers. Okay, so you guys have 5 minutes. Read it out loud twice. Mute your mics and read it out loud twice. And don't worry if you don't understand everything. It's okay. This is poetry, and poetry is, sometimes, I mean, it's challenging and it would need more than one reading. Go ahead, Yalla. And I'll read along. Let me know when you have finished. I don't want you to worry if you cannot get everything straight. It can happen because this is poetry, and like we said, poetry is not easy. It's not like reading an article in a newspaper.
Doctor,
Yeah, what?
where I get it, this poem in book?
Come again? What did you say?
This poem, where I get it in the book?
Which book? You don't have the book yet?
I have, but I don't see this poem.
Yeah, because I have taken it from one of the websites and I put it here. So it's not in the book. This is my own doing. Okay, but you can see it now, right?
Yes, because I cannot see my eyes.
Your
It's
eyes
very small.
are failing you. I mean, is it that small, يا جماعة?
You can easily find it on Google, Doctor. يعني.
Yeah, I don't think it's. I mean, I made sure that it is big enough. Is it still small? مش معقول.
Now it's clear.
No, thank you, no.
Okay, طيب. So one more time, but this time around, I would like you to have a pen or a pencil handy where you jot down notes about the poem, about the lines, your impressions about it. Okay? Yalla, go ahead.
The language in this one is very hard.
Okay, طيب. Can we start talking about it, everyone? Okay, so Aya is saying that the language is very difficult. Did that prevent you from understanding it? Well, you still understood it?
I understand the English, but I couldn't. Couldn't get the meaning, the deep meaning of the poem. I don't know what he's comparing it to.
Okay.
Especially, he's
So
describing
so
a
you're
flea.
missing. You're saying that small. I mean, if it's about small details, you know the small details, but you're missing the big picture, right?
Yeah, the analysis, especially, it's talking about a flea. So, you directly start imagining the flea and it's sucking the blood. So, I don't get the comparison.
Okay. You're, by the way, you're if you're failing to get the comparison, this is what the poem is about. The comparison is far-fetched. We say it's far-fetched means that in normal circumstances you wouldn't compare these things together.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Aya. Can we have somebody else and see whether we have the same experience or perhaps a different experience? Again, let me put this disclaimer. I'm not expecting much. This is poetry, and poetry is intellectual and it would need patience. So I'm counting on your strategic patience, if you like. So you read and reread so that you can put the dots together and come up with a meaning. Okay, anybody else? Before we go to the critical analysis and the secondary source, what the writer of the chapter is saying about the poem. Hello, what's happening?
Hello?
Hello,
Hi
who's
there.
that?
Rebecca.
Rebecca. Yeah, what do you have to say about the poem, yeah, Rebecca?
Well, I heard about this poem before. I think so. It's a mystical poem. I think because it's just expressing about the love life he has with his mistress.
Okay. So where did you
Well,
get this mistress from? And obviously,
it's
if you have read the poem,
if you
you would, I mean, he is trying to establish context with her.
he was
They are
trying
obviously,
to mingle with her.
oh,
As in,
okay.
if you read the poem carefully, you will notice that he was describing about his mistress.
Okay,
But if
go
you
on.
notice the mango means to be together, as in to seduce her.
Okay, okay. So
Yeah,
any more? Okay. Thank you, Rebecca, so much.
you're welcome.
Can we have other people, other insights? Like I said, nothing is wrong at this point in time. So come out and speak.
Doctor,
Yeah, go ahead.
I read it, but I think I agree a little with Aya. It's not
Mm,
too clear for me. I mean,
mm,
I can understand the words, but I
yes,
can't get the
you can.
point exactly.
Okay. That's. How many times have you read it?
Maybe two or three.
Yeah. Okay. That's it. What's your name?
Bashair Abdullah.
Bashair. Bashair, do we have, yani if we think of it as a story, do we have participants in this story? Do we have people or characters that you can identify, that you can detect?
I can, yeah, like wife and husband.
Okay. Hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Bashair. Thank you so much.
Right.
Yeah. Somebody else?
Excuse me.
Okay, go ahead, Dr. Ahmed.
I think the idea is about two persons or two people. There are two
Hmm.
people here.
Okay.
Both of them were picked by or beaten by the flea,
Okay. That's
and
interesting.
their blood were mingled together.
Yeah, that's interesting.
There's something يعني, common between them, or they are sharing something. يعني, both of them
Mm.
are beaten, their blood mixed together.
Yes.
There's
Yeah, I mean,
there's
are you saying, Dr. Ahmed, are you saying that this is what the persona or the speaker in the poem is saying, or this is what you are kind of discovering throughout reading the poem?
I'm trying to analyze the
Yes. Yeah.
poem, the, the poem or the verses.
Okay.
This is the first stanza, or maybe the first stanza. It's very
Oh,
long, about maybe
yes. Mm.
maybe seven lines. Maybe it's very long.
Yes.
But
Yes.
this is the main, maybe the almost.
This is, can we say that this is, remember when we said that when we talk about poems, we talk about surface meaning and we talk about deep meaning. So what Dr. Ahmed is saying is touching on would be the surface meaning, right? Whatever your eyes meet on the page. And obviously there is more to poetry than just surface meaning. You need to read between the lines and beyond the lines. You would also bring in your own experience as a human being, right? So what Mr. or Dr. Ahmed is saying is correct. The fact that it seems that we have two individuals, a man and a woman, and they got beaten or stung by a flea. Okay, so the flea now has their mixed blood, right? So this is what the speaker is saying to, obviously, the lady, and we don't know whether they have met before, they have a relationship of a sort or not, right? And then we move to the second stanza. So if this is the case, the fact that our bloods are now mingled within the flea, we might as well take it to the next level and do other things, right? So I liked it when Rebecca said that the guy or the speaker, who happens to be the male participant, is trying to seduce the lady by he is belittling the qualities that she holds dear in her life, the quality of honor, the quality of chastity. And he's saying, listen, whether you like it or not, our bloods are now are already mixed through the flea. Okay, so it was more or less like a strategy upon the part of the speaker. He's trying to seduce the lady by convincing her that those high principles and qualities like honor and purity shouldn't be there. You can simply be stung by a flea and all the bloods get together. And okay, so did you read it the way I did? Do you have more to say about it? If you move to the second stanza. So again, it's about attempts upon the part of the speaker to seduce or to convince a lady to come into a relationship with them, right? I mean, the idea is very strange when, and this is also quite unprecedented. You normally have this kind of respect and this kind of even submission to the will of the lady love. In previous love poetry, you normally have the persona of the poem or the speaker, kind of trying to appeal to his lady love and heaping praise on her, saying that she's such a beautiful lady and all these kinds of. But this time around, we're having something strange, which would point to the fact that Donne is deviating from the poetic traditions of the time, the poetic love poetry traditions. During and even before the time of Donne, traditional love poetry would be about a man who is desperate for the love of his lady love, and he does all he can in order to appeal to her by saying very nice. He normally says very nice stuff about her. Not this way. So this is quite strange. This is quite shocking even. And if anything, it would tell us that Donne here is deviating from and is dissenting from the established poetic traditions of love poetry. Okay, so if we would like to compare this poem to the other poem by William Blake, so what would you say about the two poems in terms of comparison? If you're going to compare the two, what are you going to say?
This is definitely on a higher level than the other poem. I mean,
Okay.
the way the poet thought about it. I don't think he even got the girl after this poem. So
Yes.
to even think
Very
and
shocking.
not,
Yes.
yeah, it's very shocking. The way he thought, no, he's gonna marry the girl. How the blood mixed. Yani, after Dr. Ahmad, I honestly didn't notice he was talking about his mistress until other people pointed that
Mm,
out.
mm,
My first experience with poems, honestly. So I was
yeah.
thinking of the biological way of the flea and the interpretations of each word. So I was thinking, I was looking at it
Mm,
in a wrong way. But it's definitely more deep than the other. I think than the other poem. It's
mm,
longer, obviously, and he puts more thought into it.
yes. Let's look at the form. What do you think of the form in terms of, if you can reflect back on the lines over there in terms of how long or how short they are, the stanzas in terms of how big or how small. Remember?
Yeah, the stanzas are longer. They're
Mm-hmm.
made of more lines. The rhyming is different.
Mm-hmm.
The words are harder.
Yeah, we normally refer to words and vocabulary in a poem as poetic diction. So
Mhm.
here you can see poetic diction, and the diction here is very challenging and very difficult, right?
Yeah, I
You
had to look
cannot.
up different words because
Yes,
they're new to me.
yes, that's interesting. Again, we're talking about this very strange comparison where comparing marriage, you're having this kind of relationship with a lady to the mixing of blood within the flea. This is very far-fetched. It's not an easy image. It's not, the comparison is a little bit far, and this is what we normally call conceit. So conceit is this device that poets like John Donne uses. Actually, John Donne is the one who popularized this kind of device, where you have irreconcilable things put together and presented as commonplace and everything. So we have this conceit, and in order to make it even difficult to understand, we call it metaphysical conceit. So John Donne was famous for that. He has in his poems and in his poetry in general conceits. And conceits, like I said, are about using very strange or making very strange comparisons. So the bottom line would be that this is a totally different experience if you set it against the first one. The first one was short, was sweet, was not shocking in the least, but this one is different in terms of form, in terms of ideas and devices. Okay. Sorry, what did I do? Okay. Of course, this is anthropomorphic because we have in both poems we have insects and that are used metaphorically. Like I said, prominent and on top of what we have noticed in this poem would be the idea of conceit or metaphysical conceit. And metaphysical conceit is a far-fetched and indigenous comparison, very far-fetched, very difficult and unexpected. So metaphysical conceits convey the amalgam of the intellectual with the sensuous. Donne is one of the first English poets to deploy comparisons of this kind. So where play corresponds to the tradition of nursery rhymes, remember, play was rooted in the traditions of nursery rhymes, and in this case he was conforming. Donne would inaugurate the tradition of extravagant poetic conceits, which means that he is deviating from the established poetic traditions of the time. Again, if you look at the poem, you would notice that there is this conversational directness in the opening part. You would feel that part of the poem is educational and the other part is preposterous, where you have this, shock and everything. So this is flirtation in action. So somebody is flirting with somebody else. So again, that would also a twist on the old theme of seduction. Seduction happens in traditional poetry, but not in this way. So the Flea is a witty variant on traditional love poetry, in which usually male speakers idolize and idealize unobtainable women. We have an unobtainable woman, it is true, but they didn't approach unobtainable women the way Donne did. So as you can see, the Flea is usual and unusual. Unusual, of course, in the sense that it is using and deploying metaphysical conceits. Unusual is because we have this unattainable woman to whom the poet or the speaker appeals. Also, the idea that you would like to be part, you would do anything as a poet or as a speaker to become, for your lady love to accept you. In order for you to win her heart and mind, you do everything. I remember there was this, this poet will come at a later stage in the history of English literature by the name of Alexander Pope. And Alexander Pope also, he wrote a poem in which there is also this comparison where he uses the lock of the lady's hair and how she prepares and puts makeup and all these kinds of things. What I'm trying to say here, that we have this tradition of you as a poet trying to become part of the poem, even a base part. You would if she eats using a spoon, you would like to become this spoon. If she's using a pen in order to put her hair together, you would like to be this pen. Okay, so this was there. If she's wearing something, you would like to be this piece of thing that she's wearing. It's there, but obviously Donne is using it to extremes. And I have a very interesting example here. This is a poem, an Arabic one. I'm sorry for those who don't speak Arabic, but this is how I wanted to capture what we have. The poem is called Asabak Ishq. I'm sure you have heard of the poem, and I'm sure you have heard the song. It was made into a song, and so many people, sing it. I am interested in this part where the poet is ready to do anything to be part of his lady love, and also um, this sensitivity to whatever she encounters and deals with. It's so exaggerated. I would like you to, this is part of the poem because obviously the poem is so long. I would like you to read this part and tell me how similar and how different it is. We're not going to take much time because we have people who don't speak Arabic. Okay, this is the part of the poem. I'll give you 3 minutes. And again, whatever applies to English poetry would apply to Arabic poetry in terms of challenges, in terms of perhaps reading it more than once, in terms of even reading it out loud. So I'll give you 3 minutes for that. You guys have 3 minutes. I would also encourage you after we finish to go and also listen to the song. It's a very beautiful one, and it has been sung by so many people. It's very famous. Let me know when you have finished.
Yeah, I'm done, doctor.
Okay, good, nice. So how similar it is if you compare it to the Don's poem.
This is much nicer. It's a much better comparison than the other one.
Yes. So the other one is metaphysical conceits, where you have irreconcilable elements of comparison, right? We
Yes.
don't have that, right?
This is more appealing,
Ah,
it's close
yes,
to our way of thinking.
yes. Okay. What else? What do you think of these ideas when he says the uh, well, this idea of jealousy, the fact that he's jealous of her father and her mom, her brother and her sister. When obviously this is more or less like the swag that we're familiar with when she uses it in her mouth. I mean the clothes that she wears, the cups or the glasses that she uses. Don't you think that this is also a little bit strange? I mean, you normally get jealous of another human being, right? And you get jealous of a rival in love. You don't get jealous of the family of your lady, right?
True.
You don't get jealous of a spoon that she is using in her mouth or clothes that she wears. Isn't that as far-fetched as Don's conceits? But perhaps you understand that because it's in Arabic, so you don't find it as challenging,
No,
right?
it's not. It's not because it's in Arabic. Because يعني, some people do get jealous from family members. It's not something that far fetched. But the way
But
the other poet described the flea, that one was a bit strange for us, maybe because
isn't
no one has
that
ever
strange
thought
that
about it.
that you get jealous of a glass that she uses? You get jealous from or
No,
of
a
the
glass.
clothes
Yeah,
that she,
yeah, yeah, yeah. The glass. Yeah,
right?
you're. Yeah.
Yeah, this is more or less like the conceits that we're familiar with Don, right?
Hmm.
Okay, that's interesting. Um, okay, this don't you think that this is also anthropomorphic, where clothes and glasses, right, are given human attributes as if they are rivals in the love of this guy
Yeah,
for
he
his
described the
lady?
glass as kissing her mouth, and yeah,
Yes,
he gave.
this is anthropomorphic, yes, but here we don't have animals, right? We have
You have the
inanimate
picture in the
objects.
last stanza.
Yeah. See, yeah, you have this pigeon, which obviously took pity on him, right? Very beautiful. It's always good to compare poems in your native language and poems in English. Okay, let's go back. Yeah, okay. Okay, so let's go all the way to the third poem. And the third poem is Miroslav Holub's The Fly. And The Fly happens to be similar in title to The Fly of William Blake. So we're going to see whether they are in any way similar or not. So the title promises us something. The title promises us anthropomorphism because perhaps the fly will speak and behave and observe and do things, right? And it also tells us that we are also in for another animal poem. So we had this observation last time about Miroslav Holub. We said that the name does not promise English or Anglo-Saxonness, the fact that he doesn't seem Anglo-Saxon, right? Anglo-Saxon would mean that you have John, you have William, you have Bell, right? But Miroslav would sound more like Russian, like somebody said the other day. Somebody from the Eastern Europe, right? Okay. So that would pose another question. Eh, uh, Miroslav is writing in English? No, this is not an English poem. This is a translated poem. So the poem is translated into English. Okay, and the poet is from the Czech Republic. Um, he is a Czech poet. Okay, so translated poetry. And that would bring in the question of translation when it comes to poetry. Do you think that poetry is translatable? I'm asking you. Have you ever read a poem in Arabic and then that poem got translated into English? Have you gone through this experience?
I haven't
I
read a
never.
translated poem, but I think it would lose part of its meaning.
Okay. Is it the meaning that, because obviously we can express the meaning in all languages. It's not obviously the meaning that is lost in translation, yeah, ayah. It's
I mean,
music.
yeah,
Mm,
what is meant by the poem?
yeah, okay. طيب. Can we have somebody else? What do you think? Do we have Fatma Bilal? And Fatma Bilal was active.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Fatma, where have you been hiding for the past 1 hour and a half?
I'm sorry, I just have background noise. I can't just always speak.
Okay.
Like Aya said, I do think you can translate it, but I do feel like it will lose its essence,
Yes.
true
Yeah,
meaning of it.
I wouldn't agree more. Yes. Can we have other people? I can see Zakia. Zakia contributed input at one point and she just vanished. I don't know whether she's around or not. Can we have other people? I mean, you give your opinion. I mean, obviously giving your opinion is not about being right or wrong, right? Okay. So as we said, Aya and Fatma, and pretty much everyone else would agree that a great deal is lost if you translate a poem. It's the essence and whatever that means, because we can agree or disagree on what essence, or on defining what essence. And if you ask me about essence, I would tell you the music and rhyme and even the choice of words, right? So, as I was saying, meaning can be communicated. Meaning wouldn't be lost. The messages and the ideas are there. They are transferable. What is not transferable would be the experience itself, would be the music, whether it's internal or outside. So with all this in mind, let's approach Halep's poem. Okay, and the poem has the name or the title, The Fly. Let's read it and see what it is all about. Do you have it? Can you see that? Is it clear enough? Okay. Yalla, go ahead. Read it like we always do. I would like you to read it twice. And then we'll always remember that this is a translated poem, not written in English or originally in English. Mhm. Done? I wouldn't be surprised if you say no. Like I said, I mean, poetry is about slowing down. You don't just rush things up with poetry. You take your time. You move from the whatever is surface to whatever is substance, right? Whatever is, you move from the surface meaning to the to come up with deeper meanings.
Excuse me, doctor, but like, don't you need to have a little bit of background in order to understand it? I mean, it's apparently it's talking about a battle in history
Yeah,
that we know
that
nothing about.
that's this is legitimate. What you're saying is correct, but we're trying to kind of train ourselves into always starting with the poem. I know that it has some historical references that we should look up, right?
Mm.
But yeah, I know. But still, if you read it, if you focus on the form, if you connect the form to the content or the messages, you're going to come up with universal ideas about it. Ideas that would apply to our culture and other cultures. When we talk about the idea of having a battle by a specific name, so we have this sense that there is a battle, right? So, and before spoiling it for you, I would like you to tell me what you came out with, however little it is. Don't worry. Hello.
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
Um, it felt, well, it seemed a bit graphic where you can actually visualize the
Excellent. Yeah, that's a
events,
very beautiful insight. Go on, Yafar.
but then it also felt quite factual, where they're
Mhm.
just talking about something normal
Mhm.
that did happen. But I do think there is some significance to the war because they did mention that, and the two gentlemen that they mentioned.
So, what's the context? Where are we? Are we in a house?
No,
Or
in a field,
in a field? What kind of field?
a battlefield.
Excellent. It's a battlefield. So, what are our expectations of a battlefield in general, even without reading further and further? What do people do in a battlefield? Do they eat and drink and everything in between?
They fight.
Battlefields are about what?
They fight.
They fight, absolutely. It's about violence and blood and all these kinds of things. And we see that happening in the poem. You said that it's very graphic, right? Graphic in what sense? Do we have people butchered? You have people killed, right? Their inner parts disemboweled. What is that? Is that good or bad?
Bad.
That's a horrific
Uh,
scene.
yeah, is he? Why is he presenting that? Is he saying that this is good? I like it.
No.
No, he's trying to, this is kind of what? Criticizing, condemning, right? Who have this in them? I mean, we're talking about different creatures, right? Uh, yeah, of course, other creatures have, I mean, other animals fight and everything. But, I mean, their fight is natural. It's the survival for the fittest, right? With human beings, you have rules of engagement when it comes to wars. It's a very deliberate act. Fighting and warring is a deliberate act with human beings. Perhaps it's a second nature, part of their attributes, right? The idea of fighting and everything. And the poet, by presenting that, he's trying to say that, saying that this is wrong, right? Am I reading much into it, or this is what you felt?
No, sorry. I just felt he was talking about a battle that happened,
Yeah, I mean, as what?
but
As a
not,
war reporter, an objective war reporter or something?
no, just as a matter of fact that this happened at this time.
Yeah.
That's how I took it.
And he's making a statement, obviously. What is the statement that he's making? That war is nice and everything? Why?
No,
Why is
yeah.
he so graphic? My question. It was you, Fatma, that said that it's very graphic, right?
Yes.
Why would he exaggerate it? Does he have an agenda? I mean, is he
No.
trying to say something? Is he making a statement?
Maybe this was a war that made a significant change in the place, or
Okay. So
I mean,
normally, let's go back to poems where you have wars, and they normally call them epics, if you're familiar with the word. So epics are poems, very long, poetic narratives where you normally talk about wars, right? But in traditional epics, what do we have in traditional epics? We have a great deal of glorification where you celebrate the achievements of the winning party. You talk about heroes and how they fought and how they won the wars. It's all about glory and pride in your country people who engage in wars. So, do we have that? Do we have this sense of glory that the speaker or the poet is glorifying the act of war? Did you feel that?
No, I think he's trying to describe the horrific loss for both parties.
Yes. So, with wars, it is as if he is saying that nobody is a winner, right? In battlefields, in wars, nobody wins. You may think that you have won, but you have lost, right?
Yes, exactly.
Okay, good. Okay, so in terms of accessibility, which of them is more accessible, is easy to, you would compare this one to what? To Blake's poem or to Don's poem in terms of accessibility and easiness? This one is similar. I know that the subject matter is different, but which one is similar to this one in terms of um, smoothness and ability to understand and everything?
It's
Blake.
closer to Blake's time.
Williams,
Easy
yeah.
and easier to understand.
Yeah, it's smoother.
Okay. Okay. Do we have other opinions? What do you think? Okay, I'll take Aya's word
Doctor,
for it. Go ahead.
doctor,
Go ahead.
yes. I got the idea about this poem that
Mm,
he described the insect, the simple insect like the fly, in the simple way, like how she put the eggs and describe the movement
mhm.
with the bottle with the bottle
The
how to
battlefield, the
yeah the
fact that
battle
you have a battlefield.
how to kill the people and
Mm,
in the and the result of the battle, how um, to find the people who killed, like the fly when when she put her eggs, that something killed the eggs. So
okay. So can you see this gap? So we have a battle going on, and the fly is having its own agenda. She has other concerns, right? She is at one point mating. She is moving from one side of the battle field to the other, and she doesn't miss the significance or the lack thereof of what is happening, right? Did you
Yes.
notice that it is also meditating? You know, meditating is a quality, is a human quality. What is to meditate?
To reflect on something.
Reflect on something. This is a human attribute, right? This is highly anthropomorphic, right?
Yes.
Okay, where you have the fly, which is the fly is very insignificant in normal circumstances, but here the fly is so wise. It is as if the fly is observing the carnage that is taking place and saying, what is those guys are doing? The human species is killing, is fighting against each other, and we have violence and blood, and right. So again, I like the idea that it is highly graphic, like Fatma said. I like the idea that we have the fly observing what is happening and then reflecting on that and coming up with assessments. Can you imagine with when the insignificant fly and the insignificant creature that we call the fly is commenting on human behavior and giving us a 0 out of 10 perhaps. She rubbed her legs together, sitting on a disemboweled horse, meditating. Meditating means reflecting and thinking deeply. Okay, meditating on the immortality of flies. This is ironic. So flies are very short-lived, right? They don't live for so long. But when she compared the flies to the human beings, she said that we're immortal because we don't kill each other. We don't butcher or massacre each other. So we obviously outlive human beings because they engage in carnage. Are you getting the idea? So are flies immortal? Immortal means that they never die. Of course they die. Of course they are very short-lived. But here, because of the absurdity of the human species, they outlive and they survive human beings. This is criticism. This is criticizing human beings and their foolish acts. And one of them happens to be, of course, killing each other in a battlefield or in battlefields. Okay, so formally, if you look at the poem from the formal point of view, from the form, you are going to find that we don't have rhyme or rhythm. Perhaps this is lost in translation, like we said, and this is what is bad about translating poetry. Um, so what is he using? He's using what we call free verse. Free verse means that he doesn't stick to any patterning or any metrical or rhyming conventions. So this poem seems much more scientific in its description of ends. And the Merslav's purpose seems to be more descriptive than analytical. And the poem is all about describing the behavior of a fly in the middle of a battle. So again, somebody, Aya was asking me about the historical reference and the fact that sometimes you fail to establish the context, and that wouldn't help you understand the poem. Yeah, we have a context here. The poem is concerned with the evocation of the Battle of Crécy. This is a battle that took place in 1346, and this was part of the Hundred Years' War between the English and the French. Again, like Fatma said, it provides a graphic account of the realities of war. Those realities of war are, of course, very horrific and very horrifying. Where you have disemboweled, stomachs, and you have, arms and limbs and legs, thrown away and stuff like that. So the poem is a litany of carnage, slaughter. And also, we don't have this first-person voice that we're familiar with, whether in Dawn or in Blake. So it's objective description, and it gives you the feeling that you are watching a grotesque natural history film, where the camera moves objectively and objectively registers a sequence of violent events. Again, it's free verse that we're having. We don't have rhyme or rhythm, and that would make it more like a prose poem. And this is typical of the modern age, where you would have a poem that is more similar to prose than poetry. Again, the idea of whether the poem is following the traditions of writing war poetry, no. If you still remember when we spoke about Don, and we said that he is deviating from the traditions of love poetry, here Miroslav Holub is obviously deviating from the traditions of war poetry, where in traditional war poetry you have this stress on the glory of war and glorifying and celebrating heroes and everything. So by describing the effects of battle neutrally, Holub avoids any sense of the glory of war, no glory of war. So the poem emphasizes the fragility of human and animal life, while implying that war is a pointless and almost incomprehensible activity from the quizzical perspective of the fly. Of course, we have a great deal of anthropomorphic thinking upon the part of the fly, which is observing what is happening and meditating and thinking of how absurd war is and how foolish human beings are. Okay, do you still have energy for more? Hello. Okay, type anyway. We'll stop on this note, and we'll pick this up again on. Do you have anything on Sunday? Would you like us to meet on Sunday? Sunday, everyone.
I have a
Yes,
lecture.
doctor.
You have what?
lecture.
At what time?
And this time, same this time.
We had exam.
No, من 12 to 2.
12 to 2.
And we had
So
exam.
I have من 2 to 4.
you have what?
Exam.
Exam? What kind of exam?
CMA.
TMA?
So
Type anyway, so we can meet on Wednesday. On Wednesday, when we meet, we are going to finish off the part that we are that we still have is very short, and then we move to the new chapter. You don't have to worry. Okay, so I'll meet you inshallah on Wednesday next week. Thank you so much, and it was
Doctor,
nice meeting you this afternoon. Okay,
Doctor,
go on, go ahead.
one of the materials required for this chapter is the Faber book itself of Beasts. Do we need to read it? Where do we get it from?
No, just focus on the chapter and just focus on the. I'm featuring the poem. Look for the poems. You can find them, yani on the
Yeah,
internet.
online, no problem. So we just
Yeah.
need to read the poems.
Yeah, read the poems and read the chapter very well.
Okay, thank you so much.
You're welcome. Okay, Gama, on this note and with this item, we come to the end of today's class. Thank you so much, and I'll see you inshallah on Wednesday next week. Assalamu alaikum.